Hello everybody and welcome back to the second shelf. It's another beautiful Sunday and so time for another Books Weekly, my weekly video in which I discuss the books that I've either started or read or finished the previous week. And it was a much better week than the week before, so let's get started. And the first book is a book that I've finally managed to finish, which I've started the beginning of the month, read the first 10 pages, and then, like I said in my previous video, I just didn't have time to read much. But anyway, last week was better, as I said, and so I finally finished Chimamanda Ngozie Adichie's first novel, Purple Hibiscus. I'm reading this for a Goodreads group run by Max from Well Done Books. I will leave links to the group and Max's channel down below, in which Max invited us to read Adichie with him. So we will read her 3 novels, and I finished the first one, Purple Hibiscus, just in time, end of October, because next month we will read the second one, Half of the Yellow Sun. Adichie probably doesn't need much of an introduction here on BookTube because her novels and her non-fiction have been widely discussed. But just very briefly, for those of you who are not familiar with her, she's a contemporary Nigerian writer who studied in the United States and who writes in English. Purple Hibiscus was published as her first novel, as I said, in 2003, and it follows the story of a family in a Nigerian village. We have the mother and the father. The father is quite wealthy. He has a factory making biscuits. He also runs a newspaper, and he is a very devout Catholic and unpleasant, rigid, violent father. And we have the 2 children, Kambili, who's a 15-year-old girl, and her slightly older brother, Jaja. The story is told from Kambili's perspective. We learn about the abusive father and Kambili's love for him, about the really rigid religion that is put on the children. And because of the Nigerian turmoil and the government collapses, the children end up for at least a couple of weeks with the father's sister, their aunt, and the children of the aunt, and they live there for a couple of weeks and experience a completely different life without the oppressive structure, without the abuse. And the story is told how that affects the children and how they search for their own freedom, so to say. It's beautifully written. The atmosphere is fantastic. You are immediately sucked into this world, which for me was a strange world because I don't know much about life in Nigeria. So I was really angry with the father, so much, I was engaged so much that I was getting really physical reaction to the abusive father. So that's fantastic. I thought the plot was at times not as good as the writing and the atmosphere. It dragged a little in the middle, and the plot twist in the end, how the mother, without wanting to spoil you, but how the mother finally deals with the abusive father, I thought was not completely believable. I had my doubts about it, but still the book is so beautifully written that you should certainly try it out. I can highly recommend it. If you want to read Adichie Purple Hibiscus, just try it and enjoy it as much as I did. The second book I've read was Heather Young's The Lost Girls. And there seems to be a theme having developed last week, because this was also a debut novel, a first novel, and the theme of a very devout, in a rigid way, father who is also abusive is central to The Lost Girls. I picked this book up because I read that Heather Young had practiced law for a decade before she became a writer, and I could relate to that because I practiced law for more than 2 decades before I became a writer. And more than that, she studied law at the University of Virginia in Charlottesville, and I went to Charlottesville Louisville for a year as an assistant visiting professor when I wrote my PhD. So I thought, well, I had to read her first book. And I certainly didn't regret it. It is sort of a crime novel, but not maybe completely a genre novel, but a crime is central to the story. We have a family, the very religious, devout, abusive father, his wife, and 3 children. We are now in 1935, and the story is told from the perspective of the middle child, Lucy, who is 11 years at the time, and we learn about her older sister Lilith, 2 years older, and the youngest, Emily, who is 6 years old in the summer that the story is told. Emily all of a sudden disappears, and the plotline in 1935, which is told from Lucy's perspective, follows what happened in that summer and what happened to Emily. The second plotline picks up in 1999, and central character is Justine, and she is Lucy's grandniece, so the granddaughter of Lucy's sister Lilith. We learn about Justine's life, her problems with relationships. She's now in a relationship with Patrick. She also has a young daughter, and those 2 plot lines converge towards the end, and that's really very well done, how all the clues and the twists and the turns are finally resolved in the end. I thought it was fast-paced, which you expect from a crime novel like that. It was really well written. The atmosphere was fantastic. I had a couple of minor irks, issues, especially with the relationship between Justice and Patrick in 1999, which I thought was maybe a bit overdone because Patrick is no good either. So that was a bit of a minor disturbance in an otherwise really perfect, fast-paced, great crime novel. And the 2 themes, first novel and a very devout religious community, continues without purpose. I mean, I didn't do it on purpose. It was really just by accident with the next book I've read, and that's Britt Bennet, The Mothers. Britt Bennet is a young Black American author. She wrote short stories before to much acclaim, and like I said, this is her first novel, and I was a bit disappointed. It's the story of 3 main characters, Nadia, her friend Aubrey, and Nadia's lover Luke. The story starts when all those are in their late teens, and we learn what happened to them over the course of 20 years, I think, because Nadia is in her 30s at the end of the book. The story opens when Nadia finds out she's pregnant from Luke's baby, and she decides to have an abortion and keep the abortion secret. And that is the central theme, apart from the religious theme that's also going through the book, but the abortion and the struggle with the aftermath of the abortion for all 3 characters is the central theme. We also have the mothers. There are older women in this religious community, the upper room, the church is called, who come together, who gather every week and pray for the people of their community. And the mothers tell their stories in the we point of view, which I don't really like. And I said last week, this must be a thing at the moment. In the beginning, it was okay because the mothers are sort of spectators and comment on what happens. But later on in the book, I thought they were only used to get information across to the reader and didn't serve a purpose. But what disappointed me most about the book was not the writing. It's really, really well written. It was a joy to read. But the story, I thought, was a complete mess. I felt that the story was like this beautiful apple tree which branched out in all kinds of directions and needed a good gardener to cut the branches, to make it lean and smart so that the story has focus, because I really thought the story lacked focus. We changed perspectives a lot, from Luke to Nadia to Aubrey and back and forth. That's one problem, but also there are side stories, subplot lines that are not followed through. You don't know why they're in there. So it disappointed me plot and story-wise, but I thought it was beautifully written. And because of that, and because I think Britt Bennet certainly has really, really great potential, I will read her next book. I can't quite recommend The Mothers, but a lot of people loved it, so maybe you should just check it out and make up your own mind. And the last book I've read last week is a non-fiction book, getting ready for non-fiction November maybe, and that is Laura Bates' Everyday Sexism. Laura Bates in 2012 called out to women all over the world to mail her, write her, tell her about everyday sexism they experienced. And 2 years later, she collected all those experiences and made a book out of it. I read this book for another Goodreads book club, the Feminist Orchestra Bookclub, run by Jean from Jean's Bookish Thoughts. I will leave links to her channel and to the Goodreads book club down below. And in this book club, we read feminist literature. Everyday Sexism is a really important book, I think, because it shows how common sexism is for young girls and women, whether it's in media, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's when they walk down the street at night. So you read it not as a non-fiction book from cover to cover maybe, but you flip through it and read the stories and get angry, at least I did. So it's an important awareness book, I would say, for people who are interested in the topic. I would certainly recommend it. And finally, the book that I've started last week, and it literally just started a couple of hours ago, and that's Nell Zink's Private Novelist. This is a novel about a novel. Nell Zink writes a sort of a faux homage to an Israeli writer's novel, which she translates, quote unquote, and makes her own novel out of it. But I can't say really more than that, other than I picked up the book because I really wanted to read something by Nell Zink for years, and finally I saw this in the bookstore and I picked it up. But I've read like 5 pages, so I will let you know in my next Books Weekly how it went. So this was it for today's Books Weekly. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. Give it a thumbs up if you did. Leave comments if you want to. As always, I love your comments, love talking to you in the comments, and I'll see you all next time. Bye bye.